wanted to host this workshop because we think that it's important to bring people together to have uncomfortable conversations. We need the people around us and the industry community around us to take accountability and to keep each other accountable for the goods that are being produced and where they're going to be next. Thank you all for joining us and for enjoying this beautiful afternoon here in Vancouver. I know a few of you have flown from different parts of North America to be with us, so we appreciate you taking the time and the energy to be here. Before we jump in, I was asked early today, what could a participant expect to do, and sort of what would I expect of them? The only thing I ask is that you have radical candor and curiosity. These workshops are easy to do and just go through the steps and the motions, but they're also really meaningful when we can start questioning the systems in place and where the challenges are. So if something feels like you want to ask it, but you don't know how the group will receive it, know the people around you and your table are here to guide and walk you through some of the uncomfortable questions of sortation, the responsibility we have as consumers, as industry folks, to make the right decision for the garments that come in and out of our systems. So thank you. Before we fully jump into the workshop, I do want to share a bit about Debrand. So we've been around for 15 years supporting brands and retailers from all over North America. We've been working toward building a system that really values materials to their highest potential and values human. So in essence, you can say we're hoping to be net positive for the people and planet. So circular systems. Essentially, we're working towards a system where no textiles end up in waste. We're all probably familiar, both as consumers and as industry folks, that you must design a garment, manufacture, distribute, use, collect, and then next life. Potentially is because we're all really lucky to be around people that want to extend the products and the garments that we use. The reality is that these circular systems have mostly been spoken about in theory, and in practice it's done on a very small scale. When we look at circular systems, we must acknowledge that they're a subset of a wider sustainability strategy and a sustainability framework. We know that the traditional methods are fabric manufacture, design, garment manufacture, logistics, retail, consumption. We typically stop there, both as consumers and as industry folks. But we know that today we're really going to be focusing on what enables the next components, which are collecting, transportation, sortation, recycling, and bringing that product back to its next life. So as you can see here, in this rotation, which you'll be doing today, we'll make sure that all the garments that can be dignified in the reuse process of their next life go into reuse, and the garments that can no longer serve as the garments they are go to recycling. And I know I see some recycling partners in here, so this is probably very exciting for you. But that recycling piece will feed into raw materials and then fabric development. Perfect. Similar to understanding that circular systems is a subset of a larger sustainability framework, we know that in front of us are the 10 R's. Put simply, this also needs to be part of how we engage with sustainability, circular systems, and an overall responsibility for the planet. Today, we won't go through all of these, but we need to acknowledge that refusing, reducing, and renewing the products and the resources that are already extracted are pivotal to having larger systems change. So, as has been said, reuse and repair will be talked about. Reuse and recycling will be what we will be sorting for. So, one of the frameworks that I want to present today, then there's two, is the waste hierarchy. The reuse of a garment, the upcycling of the garment in its current form with different materials added or taken away, the recycling of a garment either through creation of raw materials or through creation of downcycling of raw materials into a different product offering, incineration, and landfill. We want to make sure that every decision we can enables products to stay in the top three, but as you'll hear in some of the examples that we have, we need to be really creative, and it's really intensive to remove product from incineration and push it into recycling, upcycling, or reuse. Perfect. So, sortation for quality. We're going to jump into the first component, which is the garment condition hierarchy. So we talked about the waste hierarchy. Now let me layer in one more. This hierarchy is actually at the crux of what we do at Debrand. We want to make sure that no garment in poor condition ends up overseas burdening other communities did not choose to buy that product. We also want to make sure that the garments that are in excellent and good condition do get that next life and have the ability to be used to their full potential. So when we're going through these exercises, this is sort of my favorite hierarchy to ensure that the value that each garment is given is actually actualized. Perfect. So while we won't do any upcycling today, I know a few people that are pretty excited to talk about some examples from brands and upcyclers that have taken on the challenge to repurpose garments. So at first, we're gonna have Katie talk about Canada Goose and some of the work that they've done.
We're super proud of this project because they do a really good job of following that waste hierarchy that Lena just outlined. So some of the categories that we sort for is resale, donation, repair, and recycling. So our main goal with them is just to extract as much value as possible from their warranted product as well as their third quality product. So you can read all about this in their impact report. So if they're watching in live when this, I swear I'm not breaching that. So yeah, we're really proud of that because it does follow that hierarchy. So a lot of their products go to re-commerce channels that are in excellent condition and still have a lot of value out in the market. We also sort for the good quality product, and if there is excellent product that can't go to these resale partners, it goes to donation. And we're really proud that we get to work with communities in the Arctic and Northern Canada, working with an organization called ITK. And these garments go to them to help keep their communities warm. A lot of these good condition jackets, they might have a scuff on them that might not be worthy for like a resale at a high price, but they still hold a lot of value and a lot of warmth. We also send this community some of the garments that are in repairable condition. So to help support that community's traditional sewing skills and to allow that method and skill to carry on through different generations. They receive some of this product and they repair and they upcycle and they find creative uses for that product. So we're very proud to be able to support those initiatives. And we've also done some other really cool one-off donations to the Ukraine and other amazing causes. And then anything that's in poor condition, we do send to a recycling partner. So we're just really proud that we've been able to support them, and we've diverted 3,400 jackets in 2022 to these different channels and have helped them achieve 100% diversion of their warranty products. So yeah, we're just really excited and proud to be working on projects like this that follow this waste hierarchy.
Hi everyone, my name's Imri. I was lucky enough to be one of the early team members of Lena's newly built at the time solutions team at Debrand, which meant that we were essentially looking for value added opportunities for apparel. So one of our first projects that we were working on was identifying like high quality rain jacket type gear that had really technical hardware that potentially we can pull out and use for other purposes. And for the most part, we were operating at quite a large volume of goods, but they were all quite unique, different sizes, different SKUs. And we started noticing that there was an influx of product that looked quite similar, was quite similar in color and composition, which was kind of an early indication for us of like where something like the allocation engine that we'll talk about could come in handy. And for this, we saw, you know what, there's a lot of potential here because we don't necessarily have to be digging around for finding like a zipper here and there, finding buttons here and there that we can utilize for upcycling. We knew exactly where to look so we could kind of streamline the process of cutting out those components. And what made this like an exciting opportunity for us is we're always in communication with the potential solution partners. So Lena, for example, is on a lot of calls, intro calls with newly growing like upcycling partners, resale partners, donation. Upcycling is an area that we wanted to get involved in, but weren't necessarily sure the right way to do so. And we have a lot of partnerships that we've built in areas like New York and in California that just based on shipping goods might not be the best opportunity. But we were able to connect with a partner called Salt Legacy, who's based on Vancouver Island, who they had a really defined passion with outdoor type gear. So like duffel bags, climbing backpacks, that type of thing. And we were really excited about the use case that they provided for the items they were hoping to create. But what they were having a challenge with was locating some of those high quality, like waterproof zippers, buttons, those types of elements, which, you know, a lot of the other fabrics they were finding were locatable at like thrift stores, that type of thing. But those higher value hardware items were really difficult for them to source to be able to create these beautiful products that they had a vision of. So when we had this client that came to us that we could quickly find ways to like cut out some of those elements and provide them at scale, we were able to send them some product. And these are just some of the prototypes of what they created for us as a gift. But they had some that they were able to sell through their own channels. So that's just an example of something they were able to create through upcycling. Really just for us kind of identifying that opportunity based on the goods coming in. And I think something that really we benefited from with the solution partner was the fact that they had a really defined mission and they really marketed themselves strongly so that we could create a business case, you know, to those people at the client we were working with of like, this is the opportunity, this is some of their work that you can see, and that just made it all the more compelling. So yeah, things like this is just something we're always excited to be able to take part with.
As you can see, I think following the garment condition hierarchy really enables us to do really creative stuff. But as Emery highlighted, it's not always super scalable based on regionality, distance, material, and finding a purpose for it. So if you are out there and want to start an initiative, keep upcycling in mind, because it's one of the things that, especially for the materials that are hard to recycle and will continue being hard to recycle, like outdoor gear, it offers us a really great way to extend that product's life. Perfect. So now for the hands-on part. So as your team lead sets up the table around you, I'm going to walk you through briefly towards what a garment condition quality sortation looks like. So you'll have some Tide pens and lint rollers. You're going to have a documentation sheet to record some of the attributes for each garment. And you're going to have a cheat sheet, because we know those are sometimes really helpful. So you'll have 15 minutes to sort the pile of stuff that will soon be in front of you. This pile of stuff is quite similar to the pile of stuff we get here at Debrand. You'll have damage returns, you have warranty items, you'll have take-back items, you'll have an array of conditions. So your job today is to figure out the condition of each garment, follow suit and make sure that it gets put into the correct category, and then use your documentation sheet to mark down any notable marks or any internal debate that could have happened at your table as to if a garment should have been in excellent, good, or poor condition. When in doubt, bring the garment down to a downgrade. Remember, anything that we're going to try to reuse will be reused with dignity. So if we're going to donate it, we want to donate it with dignity. If we're going to resell it, we want to resell it with dignity. And once you're done your sortation, everyone in your table feels quite aligned. Then you're going to use the tools like the Tide pen, the lint roller, to make sure the conditions are still in excellent good condition after you removed any potential stains or marks. Any questions before you're unleashed? No. Okay. I'm excited to see it.
Not everything gets a hang tag with them, so like some of them are missing it, and that makes our jobs a little bit harder. Makes it a little bit harder to identify. The other one being some of them are missing care and content labels. So you look through like on some of the pants, they're very easy to rip out, and some might come with them, but some won't, and that makes our jobs a little bit tougher to do. So it really depends on what we're trying to sort for. We have some that we purely sort just for disposal or recycle, and all they want is different amounts of polyester, cotton, nylon, whatever it might be. Or kind of our standard right now has been going for fiber reclamation or waste energy. So a lot of companies, or like a lot of what we get just has to either get sent to turn into insulation or sent to incineration if there's too many irritants in them. So some of the irritants you might see are like buttons, zippers, too many things to take off, yeah, and like some stuff that takes a little bit too long for us to pre-process off. Like it's a very hands-on, very labor-intensive for us to go through that right now. So, yeah.
What about if you want to recycle something and you don't know the content?
typically have to err on the side of caution for that one. So because a lot of the processes that we have with the recyclers, they're so preliminary, they can't really take too much, and it's we'd rather err on caution than kind of mess with their systems. So like this one over here still has the care and content label. We can go based off of that, but for something that doesn't, it's a little bit harder.
Well, it's outside school.
Are you looking for?
Mine's more for sure based on the map that's on the back. And also, like, if you look at like the stitching pieces as well.
Okay, I'm probably good. I think this just needs a little bit of spray.
What do you think it needs?
I mean, it needs a good wash, and after that, I have to reevaluate. It's like I think it's been gently used.
Gently used, fair. What do you think yours would fall into? Good, poor, excellent?
As you can tell clearly.
There's just some cosmetic color fading, so I'd say they're still functional. I'd say it would be good, but then that depends on the consumer.
Consumer. So a lot of the times for something like that where the color fade's a little bit more noticeable, that would fall into like a poor. Yeah, it would fall into a poor and something that we wouldn't want to donate, because a lot of the times we try and do a dignified donation where anything going to them looks as good as
I
it
can
can.
feel.
Okay, so this is a poor pile.
But it's like there's no pulling, there's no.
Are we making piles?
Yeah, go for it. So we can definitely do like a poor, good, and excellent.
Okay, this would be excellent.
So relative here, that's excellent. I need to see more goods.
I was going to say good for this one.
What's your good?
Nothing wrong with it.
So a good spot is right here, right along the zipper. There's a little hole.
I can't find the holes on mine, so I think I might be. Like, it's all.
So that going to pour right away then?
But like that's fine.
For something like that where it's a bit more noticeable, yeah,
It
it
just needs a
typically
good
fall
wash
into
and,
a
like,
more where we couldn't donate it, and it's we don't really have too many
Like,
repair options at the moment.
I think you could
So
give this, like, if you
yeah,
gave this to your friend,
it's
maybe
tough
fine.
that something like still so in such great condition overall has that one little
It was
defect.
like,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, like, exactly, because that's kind of my metric of excellent, right? I would have no compunction about giving it to a friend and being like, this didn't fit me.
Yeah.
Take it. So I'm gonna go excellent on mine. I don't know how to fold
There's
clothing.
4 over there.
If
Can you
it
put
makes
this
you
in the
feel any
four pile
better,
by
I worked in a store for 9 months and I cannot fold clothing.
So
It
like,
saved my life.
this is how I fold. I don't fold anything.
Oh no.
I hang my tank tops on. So I think this one's excellent. Yeah, if the zipper had been broken, that would have been an obvious one.
Yeah.
And then I saw someone else's good that was like.
So on that one, be a little careful. If you look at the back side, I'm pretty sure there's a hole right in the crotch.
How was supposed to go?
Yeah.
I never did.
But it's tough when you're getting thousands of items. You only have so long to look for it that every once in a while things like that do slip through. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that we've tried to set up, is having different guides as we train people on like different spots to look for, and yeah, this is a handy little guide.
Yes, this was.
So how much repair do you guys do? Like
Not too much. It really does depend on the client and really like what partners we can find at the time. And we tend to, when we find a partner, send them so much that they're like, we're good for a fair bit. Yeah.
And do you guys help with resale?
Yeah, we do. So we do sort, and then the resale partners we work with have different parameters, but typically we have some that only want new with tags, excellent items, some that will be willing to take anything that's like good to new with tags, and we kind of sort based off of that.
When I put in the excellent pile, I did notice that there was a bit of staining. That's why these guys noticed.
But
So
Yeah,
what do
we
you?
can definitely
am I
do.
crazy that this looks
Categorize
like
this one.
color between?
So some of them we do have them spend a little bit of time cleaning. They'll have baby wipes, Tide pens, lint rollers, whatever it is. We can definitely try it if you want to try your hands.
Oh, okay.
So with that,
This work.
It's like throwing me off that I cannot tell.
Press down. Those look pretty close.
I'm like, this is different. This is.
But I think also because of routines. These look good. Okay, I would put these in excellent.
I cannot tell if they're fake.
I don't think they look too faded. I see what you're saying with like these spots a little bit, but I feel like that would probably fall into an excellent.
I think that might.
Yeah, I would put this in
I'd be worried about that like falling apart or something later. Like you might get 1 or 2 boxes out of it, and then just like.
How much the unravel?
It just it didn't seem like tape, like someone asked to tape or something like that.
Cleaning.
So it ends up there's a bit more under the arms here. And so, is it too much time being spent on this end?
Tough. It can be, and that would probably end up falling into like a good instead. But yeah, typically we try and tell them that they have 45 seconds to quality assess and go through, and then from there decide which one it'll go into.
Okay.
Something like
45 seconds, that was more than that.
yeah, that's the struggle. It's like 45 seconds goes really fast when you're looking at thousands upon thousands. I'm just waiting for the next part. The next part's where I think it gets way more fun.
How was this exercise? Any volunteers that want to share that? How this exercise was for them? Was this the first time you've ever done this? Have you done this before? Do you do this every spring when you clean your closet? So, what are your experiences? And any volunteers? Joy.
Yeah. So I thought this was going to be a very easy task, right? But it's complicated. So if this was my job on a daily, I'd be stressed out because there's so much gray area in between. So for me, this was an interesting exercise, which I don't do at home. So I appreciate the understanding of how complicated it can be.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyone else? New experience? Who has done this before as a show of hands? Okay, so a few people, so not completely new to most people here, but for a large part of the group, this is a first experience. Maybe the table in this corner, do you want to share your example, and if anyone in the group wants to share sort of what your thoughts were around it and why it was a tricky garment to quality sort?
We found this garment very interesting and open for a lot of debate. It's absolutely perfect in many ways, except for a quite noticeable stain, color fade. We're not quite sure what that is or why. But we had the debate of, could this be categorized as good, meaning good enough to donate with dignity? And we weren't really sure, because is this something that somebody would want to use, or would it then become a burden on them because they don't want it anymore, right? And it was, for all intents and purposes, perfect. Beautiful sweatshirt that brand new, sells for a lot of money. The only thing wrong with it is quite a noticeable stain. So we really debated of, is this good or poor? We ultimately decided on poor because we feel that that's such a big, noticeable front of center stain that whoever was donated this would actually feel it could become a problem for them, and then they needed to get rid of it. That's why we did that. So we had a lot of debate on this one.
But we had a similar debate where we were talking about, depending where you're like donating the good as well, like if you were sending this product, for example, to Value Village, like it would probably end up not where it should, and someone probably wouldn't buy it. But if you were donating it to someone that like really needed this garment, like you work at Working Gear and a lot of your clientele would really appreciate this garment. It's like an in-demand garment. It's got like a bra. So it was kind of like dependent as well on the like where it's gonna end up, which added a whole other like, well, what do we do? So this one we have it as like, we don't know.
We don't know. We love that we don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good call out. I think one of the aspects of the garment condition hierarchy that our team is really used to is that there are obviously solution partner parameters. Sarah, with Working Gear, you're a perfect example. It takes our team to really understand what happens to garments, who the clientele is, and what do they value and what that threshold is. But we know that if we had someone asking us to donate those goods overseas, we don't have that clarity. We can't talk to, it's like not a secondary connection, it's probably like a fourth or fifth connection. So that end buyer or user, we have no idea if it's actually really valuable to them. Whereas like with Sarah, we've actually done a team trip and we got to do the sort of the garments in there and got to see the clients that are actually valuing the piece. So maybe something like a small stain for them is okay and they would still receive that with dignity. So that's a really good point, that sortation is subjective, and this exercise is meant to open up a little bit of those areas of and pockets of conversation, because the end channel and who it goes to matters. And so when you want to do sortation, responsible sortation, and with dignity, you want to make sure that you've vetted those end channels and understand the person and the people and the communities that will be receiving it.
I think maybe just kind of going off of that, but even talking about the pink sweater, I know for myself, if I'm ever cleaning and I accidentally spray bleach and all of a sudden I have a weird stain, taking it to, instead of having the good, poor, excellent, is there ever an opportunity to have that in between where it can be a recreation? So say that sweater, for instance, you tie a couple elastic bands on it and spray it with bleach and it becomes a tie-dye sweater instead of just a regular one.
I think I heard that. That's a great example, because I think I heard that in this group with the white shirt. Someone mentioned that, can we just tie-dye this, or can we dye it like a darker color? And that's perfect. And that's also part of one of the other perspectives to the solution partners can bring if they're upcycling. I know in New York there's a solution provider called Make It Black, and they essentially want to dye all the garments black in order to give them an extra life. And I know brands like Eileen Fisher will do an indigo collection, so anything white or lights will then get dyed with an indigo to make sure that they can be reused. So that's an amazing way to keep garments in circulation, but it really does take that quality sortation to say, okay, does that color, does this material get to dye this way? But it's definitely possible on a small scale, and it's really important to be thinking about that. The next part of the exercise will be just as fun, I promise. We will be tackling sortation by materiality. So we're gonna remember our garment condition hierarchy. And so team leads, please put away all the excellent and good garments and leave the poor garments on your table. We will be making sure these poor condition garments end up in their next best life. So, for this exercise, you'll have a few more tools. You'll have scissors, cut-proof gloves, which I saw some people quality sort those. They should all be excellent. And we have the document sheets. See, I knew some of you had them in excellent. So for this exercise, all the tables will actually be using different sortation methods. What that means is that one table we'll be using the Matoha near-infrared scanner. 3 tables will be using the care and content label method, and 2 tables will be using the allocation engine method. So we know that it's probably really exciting, and you'll all want to try the different methods. We will have them on the table during the happy hour for you to get to test what the NIR scanner does and what our Debrand proprietary allocation engine does. So we'll jump right in. So your team lead will actually be walking you through your sortation method. Every table is different, so we wanted to regionalize this. And you'll have 15 minutes to sort your garments by 80% or higher cotton, 80% or higher polyester, 80% or higher nylon, and fiber reclamation. So if your sortation method can't identify the materiality, this garment will have to go to its next best life, which is fiber reclamation. So a type of recycling that brings the garment, opens the garment, and puts it into downcycling solutions like insulation, punching bags, stuffings. So once you've categorized cotton, polyester, and nylon, you'll begin to pre-process. So this is where the person with the scissors has the gloves that were in excellent condition. And the pre-processing includes all elastic components, all metal and hard plastic components, including buttons and zippers. If you have any questions, I'll be around. For now, direct them to your team lead. Okay, have fun.
One of the other things that really does become a problem is that as we kind of go through this stuff, we run into the issue of these are coming in from stores, they're going through multiple hands with different distribution centers, all these different things. Hang tags are delicate. They fall off really quickly, really readily. So when we go through a pallet, we could have 800 pounds in that pallet, but of all the things in there, I think in total, 1 has a carrying content, or 1 has a hang tag. 2, I lied. So that kind of makes it a little bit harder to do this. We end up sorting through those pallets and only pulling things that have tags, but it's not really a fun device to play around with when that's all you get to scan. I'm gonna pull the stuff out of there. I'm gonna go a little bit against the rules just to make it more fun for everyone here. So we'll pretend like all of these were poor quality items. And if you want to, so this is our little allocation engine terminal. All it is basically a text box that hooks up to a Bluetooth scanner, and you can scan any of the QR codes, barcodes, whatever it is. It'll enter in the barcode. This item, we have the data for it, has the tag on it. You can see it would go to a cotton recycler. So if you guys want to go through, each person can take an item or take two, or we can just pass them around and you can kind of go through and start scanning, play around with it, and just kind of see where each item goes.
And sorry, these tags, they were placed on it after sorting.
No, so this would be like, I had to make these just for our sake, but typically these are like the brand's carrying content lag. Yeah, they come with it. So it makes our lives a little bit easier. So if you want to, scanner for you. You can kind of take your choice on whichever garment. So that one, there is some kind of parameters built into it where if it's too much of a mixture of things, so we're sorting for 80% cotton, 80% polyester, 80% nylon, that
Too much spandex?
too much spandex. So that would go to fiber reclamation instead. Yeah. Not the perfect case because I made these to try and make it very easy. I don't actually know the materiality of that one by heart. So that's kind of where this works really well is we can set the parameters. So we could say, oh, it has to be 80% this and it can't contain 2% spandex or any kind of spandex. So if it has any kind of spandex in the data, that one automatically gets sorted out and goes to a different channel. So they'll send us basically a giant SKU list, and it can be like, they'll pass us the carrying content label data or the actual like raw materials data, and then we'll kind of format it into a way that's usable for us, and then we just program the back end of this. So if you scan this tag,
What's the issue with spandex? It just doesn't. It
doesn't shred as well. There's this different kind of contaminants to it, so that one would go to a nylon recycler. I don't think
This one
these are
actually says it's 100% nylon.
Yeah.
Like it still has a tag for the body. And then it says the bra is 85% nylon and 15%.
And then that one we would still have to do a little bit of pre-processing to remove the bras before it went to an actual.
So it's just the pad, like the pad part? You just
So those ones would have to get cut out, and we'll do that after. That's the next part. Cool.
So is this recyclable? It's got Lycra in it. It's a blend.
Typically, it depends on the blend itself, but that one would typically be fine to go since it's still the 81% nylon. Yeah, so it's like the brand's looking for specifically like high enough contents.
Yeah, okay.
So if you want to try another one to scan any of them.
I'm sorry, where is this information coming from?
Sorry, so that comes from the brand themselves. So we'll ask basically like for a care and content label data or some kind of materials information, and then we transform it into something usable for us. So this is the part where we get to destroy some stuff, which is always a fun part of my job. So we'll let you do this one first. If you want to throw the gloves on. So it is very fun. For some of the different recyclers, they can only take certain things, and that's where this gets a little bit difficult of finding like what kind of irritants are in here that the recycler can't take. So for this one, like there's a hidden kind of side pocket that becomes an issue for recyclers. Same with like the metal buttons, or like there's little rivets in the pockets. So for these ones, when we typically pre-process them, it's just a straight cut across the bottom.
Okay.
So if you want to, just take the whole top off. You can definitely cut around it, but that's the easiest way that we go about doing it. Yep, perfect. I hope they're brand new scissors, so I hope they're sharp enough. So yeah, that's where these kind of fall into two different piles. So this could still go to fiber reclamation, but then this would go into the pile for the actual recycler itself. Yeah, it's a great skirt. I think you could pull it off. What size do you wear? The next part of this is like, so these pants, they can go to a polyester recycler, but the issue being there are kind of like different irritants that they can't take. So the metal button, there's rivets in the back pockets, or like this kind of hidden zipper pocket that they don't really want to deal with. It's too much metal for them, or plastic, or whatever it is. So the fun part for us is then it gets into like the deconstruction of it. So someone wants to put on the gloves, you can cut apart a pair of pants.
Scissors too.
It's the perfect time for cut-proof gloves.
So I thought you just basically cut across.
Yeah, so the easiest way that we tell them is because we do this with a bandsaw instead of just with cutters. So instead of trying to get them to get into the potential of like hitting the zipper or like any of the pockets and getting stuck, we just kind of aim for below the zipper line and call it good. Truth, anything here is going to end up going into Fiber-X after this event anyways. We don't have anyone that wants to take these. So you can definitely feel free to kind of cut it apart and see how it feels to go through this and like the different process. So for some,
Even these that are all nylon, nobody wants them.
There's a lot of different reasons. But a lot of it is just because like right now trying to figure out nylon 6 versus 6/6 and like so a lot of it is just they're still in the initial operations or like initial kind of like build up of their facilities, so they don't have the capacity to take as much of the product as we want to send them. And part of it is also like getting brands on board with being okay with all these, because it's like so new, they don't want to risk their material or like, for something like these, same idea as what you were saying with this, you turn them inside out and cut along the bottom, yeah.
And this, I guess, is because of the elastic.
Yeah, so that one I believe, like the main body is definitely like recyclable, but this is I think a nylon or a spandex, and that's where it has to get cut out. Yeah.
But what about the waistbands?
Typically, so for these, we would kind of aim for the waistband and just get rid of that too. And like, it's very tough because then you look at the actual yield out of something like this and you realize like, that's like 10% of the garment. Do you want to try hand cutting some shorts? Sweet. So for these, typically this liner and then this, yeah, it's all the elastic in it that usually makes it fail out. And this one side zipper. So kind of like what you said before about going in the shape of it, this one you could go across the top and then down. And that is another consideration, is just the time that it takes to do it. It is time consuming to pre-process all of it.
If these were short shorts, there'd be very little material left.
Yeah.
And so would you even consider like...
It's something that we do have to kind of weigh the different options on. Like, just because they're perfect in the sense of their materiality works, but because it's too long or too difficult to pre-process, it does end up getting kind of thrown to the fiber reclamation rather than sending it to the recycling. So we are trying to figure out different ways to make that faster and more efficient and better, but it's a work in progress.
So these pieces with the zipper and the rivets and the buttons, that will be going to another recycler that will turn it into insulation potentially?
Yeah, so these will get shredded, but then their process will remove the metal, and then they can send the metal to whoever they want.
So they'll have to do another process of cutting all this up.
Theirs is actually nice enough where they just feed it through their system, and it removes metal automatically.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So that's not going to waste then?
No, none of this will go to waste. Nothing that comes to us ever gets sent to landfill.
So I want to open up just asking, what was the biggest challenge to the method that you were using? Yeah?
I think with us, it was mostly that a lot of the garments didn't have.
You were the care and content label?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was difficult to,
Totally. And the care and content label is a very popular way in traditional sortation to just separate the garments quickly. But like you mentioned, the garments in front of us don't often have their care and content label. And even other garments, especially silk tops, blouse, dress, where that care and content label may irritate the user, we definitely do see that gets removed, making it really challenging to use that as the de facto sorting method. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else with potentially a different tool? Yeah.
We had the scanner and had the same issue that not all the garments were tagged.
Exactly, yeah. So with the scanner, what we know is that we definitely get more accurate readings that are not just the care and content label. We know more weights, we know the panels, we get a better picture or clear picture of the garment, but it's definitely dependent on that digital identifier, in that case being the point of sales tag, as giving us those prompts, so for sure.
And also with the iPad, if it like malfunctions because it's a tablet, you have to click like 5 more times to be able to delete the thing to re-enter it. So I can see how that could add a lot of extra work if you misscan something.
Totally. So in the introduction of technology in any type of sortation or any type of scaling, it definitely makes sense that technology has to be aligned. So from where we're human based in the manual sortation, you know, if a human's down, maybe we can call in a temp worker or someone that's sick to come support and replace. Whereas if your technology malfunctions, at any point your line is down and you're not able to continue sorting, which then becomes quite similar to what we see in manufacturing. When their lines are down, the cost of not running is a lot higher. So there's definitely more risks associated with moving towards technology and more secondary layers that need to be added. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? I'm looking at the one table that had the NIR scanner. Anyone want to share anything?
The one that wasn't giving a consistent read was a blend.
Okay.
And so we found that at one point it was like 77% nylon, and then at one point it's 72, and so it didn't fall into spec regardless, but
yeah,
some variations in that.
Yeah, that's a really important sort of area to highlight on the NIRs, that right now anything that leans towards like not higher than 90% typically gets a quite accurate read or consistent read. But when you introduce blends or core spun materials or materials that are dyed with using certain technologies or techniques that don't allow for the near infrared to bounce back a signal, we end up getting a misread or an inaccurate read. So definitely, you could see how all of these methods have their opportunities of making the work more efficient and giving the garments the best next life. But we can also see how these sortation methods can also become a barrier or even give us the wrong information, which is why I think this should be probably coming into terms for you, but we're really trying to blend all of these different techniques together to ensure that we're getting the most accurate read consistently through all the information that's available. So not just looking at a garment through an NIR, looking at a garment through a point of sales tag or through a care and content label, we're looking at a garment holistically and figuring out all the different points of data that we can then take to give that best next life pretty efficiently and smoothly. Makes sense. Okay, what would you do differently if you were able to sort again? Even after hearing some of the other challenges and success the other tables are, would you switch technologies or methods? What would you do? Table at the back. Okay.
I have maybe just a question like in relation to that. Like some of the care labels are not always extremely like perfect. Like sometimes there's claims on it that is not necessarily like 100% factual. So like do you guys double check sometime with NR? Like do you prioritize one over the other just because, especially if there's small content, some of the brands or like their care label might not be accurate? Just curious how you guys manage that.
Yeah, that's a great call. That's very similar to that layering of it. At Debrand, we predominantly use our allocation engine, and we've been testing the NIR. So we really, that clarity and that confidence in the product is coming in from a deeper bill of material that the brand has given us, the care and content label, and there are some consumer reports out there that do indicate that the whole story of the materials used for that garment aren't actually placed. It's just the majority or the main garments. So there's probably some conversation to understand, what are brands disclosing? How is that the traceability behind it? And that's where you can probably see a lot of the brands moving into that digital identifier space where that or that person that's doing the next act, so whether reusing or selling, gets that authentication or that validation from there. But from a care and content label sortation, at least at Debrand, unless we're confident in what we're reading or are confident in the product to know, that's typically not how we use as our default sortation method for some of the concerns you mentioned. Yeah. Perfect. Anyone else? Yeah. Was it easy? Can you see yourself doing 8 hours of it? Do you want some automation?
It's just alarming how much is going. Where is it going? Nowhere.
We got a lot, but
what's like those zippers are really good, and how do you? I mean, millions of these really good zippers.
We decided to go for the most efficient cut too, because we were thinking about if you're compounding time.
Yeah.
And so we did a one cut, which was nice that all the trims were concentrated to the upper half of the garment instead of having to cut around each individual. But then you're left with a lot more waste.
But salvaging all these metal bits, and I mean.
Yeah.
It's just alarming.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that you chose to do the technique that was the most efficient. And that was brought up over lunch as well. But even when we talk about tie-dyeing or repair, everything has to come in a system of scaling and scalability. And so when we're looking at the pre-processing for these pants, although there is waste, the alternative to having these pants go into fiber reclamation and maybe not to a recycler that is able to create in raw material, there's going to be constant trade-offs in the scaling process. So totally hear you. If you're have to making one cut, or if you have to upcycle or repair, you might be very picky with what you do and make sure that garment in particular holds the right feedstock if you're thinking about recycling, or the right MSRP or value for resale if you're going to invest a lot of time in continuing to upkeep that garment or repair it. We were actually talking about a tent at the table, the back, that was repaired by Nick, and it was a tent that we obviously value because tents are expensive, but we could easily have just said, okay, let's cut it and then call it a day and use it as pieces. So to your point, if we're cutting across, could those zippers then go into something like the totes that Imre talked about? And then what scalability is there, but who wants it? And that's where I think another table mentioned like the design guide and getting designers to think, okay, if I've created a product, how can I bring it back into the system if I know this upper panel is what's going to be left over for the next 2 to 3 years, but after that automation will come in. So having these conversations with different people in the room, product developers, brand, material specialists, recyclers, really help us start understanding where the inefficiencies happen and where they can potentially be passed on to the next person. Perfect. So now what we're going to move into is the discussion section. We've tackled a lot in the last hour and a half, and we do want to offer some time for reflection, both with yourself, with your new team at the table, and then with the group. So please take the next 2 minutes to help fill in a courageous conversation the industry needs to have is. So we'll be walking around with some paper and pen, and then I'll prompt you when it's time to talk within your team, and then bring you back to the group. Thanks.
Often when you're working for a larger company, you're so constrained by price points that you could have gone this way, which is much better, but so often you have to go this way because you're making that, hitting that MSRP. But,
So what would the conversation be, I guess, around that? Or who would be in the conversation, maybe?
Yeah.
You can write it down. Okay. One that came to mind was more around engaging, I guess, like customers on like what their perception was. So I put like ugly vegetables. Can we resell or reuse products before recycling? What are customers' actual perceptions versus like what our brand's perceptions are? Are they matched? Will people take products that we didn't think that they would actually
Great question.
want to?
Something like that.
I was watching a webinar today around people wanting to, as you say, price points, maybe spend more. I know sometimes action and perception are two different things. So would they also would customers pay a little bit more, an extra $1 if they knew that all of these items were coming from different sources?
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
Definitely depends on the channel, I think.
Yeah.
Like say for the products that we work on, which is camping equipment, like from if it's at Canadian Tire retail,
Yeah.
I think the major perception is that if it's going to cost more and this one over here is a little bit cheaper, I might as well go for this one because I don't think there's that knowledge base. Whereas, like, say, if it was sold at Mountain Equipment Co-op, it'd be totally different.
Oh, interesting.
Or maybe even Sport Check or something like that. But different channels, I think.
Yeah. What about under the word I've been using a lot lately is like underutilization of products. So is the value that we're putting on things lesser because it's easy to replace them? They're more replaceable. because things are less expensive these days. And so do you value the items that you pay more for? Probably. And so you extend their life longer. And so is that something that the conversation that we have to have with brands, fast fashion specifically, around the devaluing? What they're doing is they're devaluing the resource. And we're running out of that resource. So unless we all start to understand that impact and change our behaviors of shopping and utilization, not just shopping, but having it sit in our closet without us using it at all. That's the problem. So we're taking too much and we're using it too little. I think it's a bit of both, maybe. So can you maybe impact the influencers in the consumer groups that are influencing by leveraging brands to engage them and educate them? And then will that propel it? I don't have the answer. It's just it's something I've been thinking about. Yeah. What about you guys over here, this side?
Well, I think all the supply chain has to be involved in this process. It's not just the brands and the fabric makers, but it's, you know, the yarn makers, the fabric makers, the garment manufacturer, the brands, and of course the consumer, because this is not something that just the brand can handle. You know, educate the consumer. It's not easy, and you know, brands are spending a lot of money on marketing, you know, about what they are doing. So the entire supply chain has to work together with the brand on that.
Collaboration.
Yeah. Partnership.
I think there's the ability to do both good and also call out bad in the space. Particularly as we all talk about economies of scale, you know, if one brand is out there trying to reduce zippers to make sortation and make processing easier, that's not going to matter if someone else here is adding more zippers to their product to meet a certain style or something. If we're all pushing material to the same recyclers, we're all pushing material through the same processing and sorting, we all collectively, all the brands win if we all work together on that end. Whereas if a recycler has to process dirty material, really bad blends, tons of zippers, their processing costs go up and they're going to charge all of us more.
Right.
So we all collectively are going to, you know, not be able to hit margins and things. Whereas if we all agree to cut down on zippers, we all collectively, you know, it processes faster.
Yeah.
You spend less waste getting rid of metal waste. You spend less time reprogramming things. So we all collectively win.
Yeah, great point.
Do you think you'd see legislation in the space for textiles like we do with packaging, where there's like those like hard to recycle items that are starting to kind of like level up everyone, or do you think that's more like a company base?
You know, I'd love to, none of us I don't think here are based out of the EU, but that's where I think you'd see it. And so in some ways I wish I knew more about the EU landscape, because that's, I would look to that. But a brand that is based out of the EU, I feel like would be more in touch with that. Whereas like Canada, America will drag its feet.
Yeah. You mean like product responsibility? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah,
product
like PR, but like you're starting to see with packaging right now where the like the PVCs are certain levels of types of packaging you're not allowed to use anymore, or you'll be taxed higher for different types.
Right.
So I just
interesting. That's a good way. Yeah, that could be a way to do it. It's, you know, it's tough because we're all so driven to consume and want more and be more and do more. And I think it's really interesting when you look at human behavior and how what is our true happiness tied to. I know this is going deep, but it's true, right? Like it's all rooted in human behaviors. And in the last 30 years, don't quote me on this, although they're filming me now. I think there's like a stat that we've taken more resources from the earth in the last 30 years than in all of other human civilization. And we don't have the systems in place to capture it. Like, what is it, the percent, like very, very small percent of textiles is recycled still. And we know that that's wrong, but it's hard to move that needle. So that's, I think, the courageous conversation, that we have to be honest about our own actions, right? Like myself included, you know, like what I teach my kids about. And, you know, you don't always need the best. You don't always need to look the best. Yeah, it's tough.
We have a couple of minutes left, and I just wanted to go through each table to get a sense of what was discussed and if something was notable.
I think there was a few things that came up. one of the things is understanding what is feasible at the end of life right now, and understanding kind of all of this, and taking that back to the product team, design team, creating design guidelines to make sure that we're designing with the end of life in mind is really needed. But also, like, we need to shake up a little bit of the industry, and we need to maybe move away from product to service. We need to move, kind of rethink, educate a consumer about what they actually need in a garment. You know, like, people love their leggings, but there's so much elastane in it, and there's nothing you can recycle about it. So maybe there's education around, do you really need this, or is there another solution? So there needs to be, I think, courageous conversation from the brand side to educate consumers of what is actually the best way to go.
So we touched on a few subjects, one being accessibility of solutions to a lot of brands and consumers. And then we also talked about incentives. So what incentives people have or brands have to get started on these projects. And then also another really big, interesting topic that we discussed was overproduction, and talking about actually going back and limiting our production, and maybe you mentioned, you know, skipping a season. So that was a pretty big one.
Cool. Thank you. Very, very important. Incentives for sure, and overproduction, and the really trying to, I think that goes back to that pink sweater, is if we know we have a lot of pink sweaters out there in the world, then maybe we can recycle the ones that are probably with that big of a stain, and make sure that the ones that aren't keep getting circulated. So that's a good call out. Lisa's table, you
We also talked about overproduction too, and just like seeing the amount of excess and how to reduce, and just how overwhelming it is, especially maybe in some cases without a scaled solution for it as well. We also talked about donation, and like the idea of donation like with dignity, and like making sure that donation doesn't become like the scapegoat or like the dumping ground to make us feel good about waste potentially. We also talked about trends, and like why trends are necessary, and like design cycles, and maybe like how we look at those as like a system that might be contributing to overproduction. And then same as this group, like, are brands responsible for paying for this? Like, who pays? And how can we all individually be responsible for different components of the system? So lots of different things.
Yeah, it's great. It seems like lots of deep and meaningful conversations. Thank you. Before we close off and we bring you closer to the happy hour, we have some closing remarks from Amelia.
I want everyone to stand up real quick, if you can, if you're able to. I did this with my team, a couple weeks ago, and I want you to stand on one foot. And now I want you to bend down and try to touch your toe. Don't watch me, I'm gonna fall. And I want to ask, how does it feel? Are you comfortable right now? Okay, you can come back up. The reason I did that with our team was that we're entering a period within Debrand, but also as an industry, where it's going to be really uncomfortable. And Lita just stole it, so I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because it's so novel, and we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't really know how to fix it. But we have a massive problem, right? We do. We truly do. Those beautiful mountains are slowly burning, well, quickly burning in our case here. There's climate change issues, there's waste issues, there's resource depletion. My customers that are here hear me talk about this all the time. It's just, we've got a big problem, and it needs all of us to solve it in collaboration. And so I want to thank each of you for coming and taking a few moments today. It really means a lot to us. It's really cool to see. I'm really proud to see everyone wearing our new Debrand logos, which we're just launching thanks to the folks at Monday Creative. So thank you to everyone that took part today. It means a lot. The other exciting announcement, some of you know this, but we are moving to a new facility, Debrand, just outside of Vancouver in the South Surrey region, so near White Rock. It's a beautiful new facility, and it's going to be the first automated textile for circularity facility in Canada, and I think Tara said maybe in North America. So it's going to have some really cool new technologies, some that you're starting to learn about here. But but others that we're still figuring out how to combine them to be efficient and accurate at sorting clothing and other textile items so that we can maximize their value. So while we're just talking about clothing here, what we hope at Debrand is that we can be an inspiration, and with our partners and our brands, to inspire a change of behavior and a shift of thinking that each of us needs to have, and that each of us needs to impart on the people that surround us, to look at how we use things, how we purchase them, and how we dispose of them, because we all are a part of the problem. So we can be part of the solution as well.